Roberto Martínez is a funny individual.
At his age right now, do you think using Cristiano Ronaldo as a starter for a 90 minute during the whole tournament is very effective, or there is another way in your mind to use him in the coming games?
Can I ask you something? Do you know how many minutes Cristiano played last season?
Every game with Al Nassr.
Then you're answering your question.
Somehow this guy always falls upwards. No matter how bad he does as a manager, he always seems to land some of the biggest jobs. And then, when things go inevitably wrong, he rarely ends up taking the blame. Portugal's 2026 World Cup is the perfect example. Despite leading one of the most talented squads on the planet, Martinez oversaw another disappointing major tournament. Portugal stumbled through the group stage like a drunk guy, were tactically outplayed by Spain in the round of 16, and went home far earlier than expected.
But in the end, it is Marino's goal that is the difference between the two sides. Spain advance, Portugal and Cristiano Ronaldo go home.
Yet the headlines weren't about Martinez, they were about Cristiano Ronaldo. The debate became whether Ronaldo should have started, whether he was holding the team back, or whether this should have finally been his last tournament.
The manager of Portugal, yeah, he took him off in that Croatia game, but this was the biggest of moments against one of the favourites for the tournament, and he's left a player on who did basically little in the game.
Meanwhile, the man actually making the tactical decisions escaped much of the criticism.
Also a statement is Cristiano Ronaldo, who was always going to be at the centre of debate, considering the way that Roberto Martínez was going to use him throughout his tournament.
For anyone who has followed Martinez throughout his career though, none of this was surprising, because Portugal wasn't the first golden generation he failed. He had already done it with Belgium. When Roberto Martínez became Belgium's manager in 2016, he inherited what many people believed was the best squad in the country's history. Almost every position was filled by a world-class player in his prime. You had Kevin De Bruyne, who was one of the best playmakers on the planet. You had Eden Hazard, who was at the peak of his powers with Chelsea. Lukaku couldn't stop scoring. Behind them were Vincent Kompany, Jan Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld, and Thibaut Courtois. For most managers, it was a dream job. Now, to be fair, Martinez did improve the team early on. After the more chaotic years under Mark Wilmots, Belgium looked calmer in possession, more organized, and more confident on the ball. Everything came together at the 2018 World Cup. In the quarterfinal against Brazil, Martinez made what many people still consider the best tactical decision of his career. He abandoned his usual system and pushed Kevin De Bruyne into a false nine role. De Bruyne's movement dragged Brazil's defenders out of position, creating huge spaces for the likes of Eden Hazard and Lukaku to attack on the counter. The plan worked perfectly. Belgium stunned Brazil 2-1 before eventually finishing third, the best World Cup finish in the nation's history. It was the greatest night of Martinez's coaching career, either that or when he won the FA Cup with Wigan. Ironically though, it may have also been the worst thing that ever happened to him. That win created the image of Martinez as this tactical mastermind. From that point on, there was very little reason for anyone inside Belgian football to question him. The success in Russia became proof that his ideas worked, and that belief stayed even as the squad slowly began to age. Instead of evolving with his players, Martinez largely stuck to the same philosophy that had brought success in 2018. The problem was that Belgium didn't stay the same after that. Its players got older. Big head Vincent Kompany retired. Alderweireld and Jan Vertonghen gradually lost the pace that had once allowed Belgium to play such a high defensive line. And perhaps most importantly, big juicy bum Eden Hazard's career was derailed by injuries after joining Real Madrid. The team that had reached the World Cup semifinals simply wasn't the same anymore. Now, top managers adapt when their squad changes. Martinez didn't. He stayed loyal to the same 3-4-2-1 system that had worked in Russia, even though it demanded enormous amounts of energy from his wingbacks. As players like Thomas Meunier, Yannick Carrasco, and Thorgan Hazard got older, Belgium's attack became slower and easier to defend. The ball moved from side to side, cross after cross came into the box, but there was very little movement through the middle. Opponents quickly figured out the blueprint. Just sit deep, protect the center, and force Belgium wide. Once teams did that, Martinez rarely had another solution. That became painfully obvious at Euro 2020. Belgium squeezed past Portugal in the round of 16, but when they came up against Roberto Mancini's Italy, they were second best for most of the game. Italy pressed higher, moved the ball faster, and controlled the midfield. Tactically, Belgium had no response. Too often, it felt like Martinez's plan was simply to hope Kevin De Bruyne would produce another moment of brilliance. It was KDB and Inshallah. There was also another issue beginning to frustrate supporters as well. Martinez became fiercely loyal to certain players, even when their club form suggested they shouldn't be starting. No one symbolized that more than Eden Hazard. Despite barely playing for Real Madrid because of constant injuries, Hazard continued to start some of Belgium's biggest matches. Meanwhile, players like Leandro Trossard, who were performing at a much higher level every week for their club, often found themselves watching from the bench. To many Belgian fans, it sent the wrong message. It suggested that reputation mattered more than performances, and over time, that kind of favoritism only made it harder for the next generation to establish themselves. By the time the 2022 World Cup arrived, Belgium's golden generation was running on borrowed time. Many of its biggest stars were now in their 30s. Their legs weren't as quick, the intensity wasn't the same, and the team that once looked capable of winning every tournament suddenly looked old. Martinez again didn't really adjust. He largely trusted the same core that had carried Belgium for years. The cracks showed immediately. In their opening match against Canada, Belgium somehow escaped with a 1-0 win. The scoreline made it look like they were comfortable. The performance was anything but. The moose-loving Canadians dominated large stretches of the game, pressed Belgium relentlessly, and created chance after chance. Without the giraffe Thibaut Courtois saving an early penalty and a clinical finish from Michy Batshuayi, Belgium could have easily started the tournament with a loss. It was an early sign that something wasn't right. Then came the comment that changed everything. In the middle of the tournament, Kevin De Bruyne admitted that Belgium probably couldn't win the World Cup because the squad was simply too old. The comments created huge headlines and exposed cracks inside the dressing room that could no longer be hidden. After Belgium lost 2-0 to Morocco, Jan Vertonghen fired back with a sarcastic response. We probably also attack badly because we're too old. It was a joke on the surface, but with every joke comes a hint of truth. Instead of looking like a united team chasing one final dream together, one last dance, Belgium looked divided. Then came the match against Croatia. Win and they would reach the knockout stage. Fail and one of football's greatest generations would be heading home. Once again, many questioned Martinez's decisions. Rather than fully embracing young players like Jeremy Doku, Charles de Ketelaere, or Zeno de Bast, he continued to place his trust in experienced names. Big Romelu Lukaku, who had only just returned from injury, was thrown into the second half. Chance after chance fell his way, but he couldn't score. One hit the post, another bounced off his body, others somehow stayed out. Belgium could only draw 0-0, and just like that, the golden generation was gone. Martinez resigned immediately after the final whistle. It was a disappointing ending to what had once looked like one of the most talented squads European football had ever produced. Instead, they never reached a single European Championship or World Cup final. After Belgium's golden generation collapsed in Qatar, most people expected Roberto Martinez to take a step back. Instead, this man landed one of the biggest jobs in international football almost immediately.
Roberto Martínez has been appointed as the new head coach of Portugal. Martínez stepped down from his role as Belgium head coach following their group stage exit at the Qatar World Cup.
To this day, many fans still wonder how. How does he keep falling upwards? But when you look at Portugal's situation in early 2023, the decision starts to make more sense. The Portuguese Football Federation was realistically looking for someone who could manage Cristiano Ronaldo's final years with the national team. Fernando Santos had created huge controversy during the 2022 World Cup by dropping Ronaldo in the knockout rounds. The decision split the fan base, it dominated the headlines, and it created a political storm around the national team. The federation wanted stability, and Roberto Martinez seemed like the perfect fit. He's an excellent communicator, rarely creates conflict, and always backs the stars publicly, even to a fault. So, rather than forcing difficult conversations about Ronaldo's role, Martinez fully embraced building the team around him. At first, it looked like a masterstroke. Portugal cruised through the Euro 2024 qualifying, winning all 10 matches and scoring 36 goals. On paper, they looked unstoppable, but there was one major problem. The numbers were misleading. Portugal's qualifying group was one of the weakest in Europe, and many of those wins came against opponents who simply couldn't punish the team's tactical weaknesses. When Portugal faced stronger opposition, that's when the cracks started to appear. The smooth passing football became slower. The attack became more predictable. The round of 16 at Euro 2024 against Slovenia was the perfect example. Slovenia defended deep, stayed compact, and comfortably dealt with Portugal's endless stream of crosses. As frustration grew, Ronaldo had the chance to win the game from the penalty spot in extra time. Jan Oblak saved it. Ronaldo was devastated. Now, many managers would have considered taking him off long before that. He had already played so much football and looked physically exhausted. Martinez never even considered it. Ronaldo stayed on for the full 120 minutes. Now, the Portuguese eventually survived thanks to Diogo Costa's incredible penalty shootout heroics. But the performance raised even more questions about whether Martinez was making decisions for the good of the team or to protect CR7. Those questions only became louder against France. Saliba and Upamecano barely gave Ronaldo a chance to influence the game. He struggled to get involved and finished with fewer touches than almost anyone else on the pitch. Yet Martinez refused to make the biggest substitution of the night. Instead, he took off Bruno Fernandes, Portugal's main creator, then Rafael Leao, their most dangerous dribbler. Ronaldo stayed, and Portugal lost on penalty, ending another major tournament in disappointment. Now, despite the tactical disaster of Euro 2024, the Portuguese FA stood by Martinez for the 2026 World Cup. It makes sense actually, because in between these two major tournaments, Portugal won the Nations League. Yes, it's not the most prestigious tournament, but they did beat the likes of Germany and Spain to lift it. So it wasn't like they were farming against the likes of Luxembourg and Liechtenstein like they do in qualifier. But in typical Martinez fashion, when the stakes are actually high in a real tournament that everybody cares about, his teams crumble. Nevertheless, Portugal arrived at the 2026 World Cup as favorites. On paper, it wasn't hard to see why. On top of winning the Nations League, they had world-class talent all over the pitch. João Neves and Vitinha controlled the midfield. Bruno Fernandes pulled the strings in attack. Nuno Mendes was the best in his position. And leading the line was 41-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo, becoming the first player ever to start 6 World Cups. Their opening match against the Democratic Republic of Congo looked like the perfect opportunity to make a statement.
Neto, great header and in! João Neves, the first Portuguese goal of another World Cup pursuit.
And it started exactly as planned. It felt like the beginning of what should be a comfortable evening. Instead, it became a nightmare. Rather than building on their advantage, Portugal slowed the game down. Their midfield repeatedly chose the safe option, moving the ball sideways instead of playing through the lines. Their possession numbers looked impressive, but they weren't really creating any danger. Bernardo Silva struggled to get involved. Bruno Fernandes found himself dropping deeper and deeper just to receive the ball. And Ronaldo remained isolated between the two center backs, waiting for service that rarely arrived. As Portugal became more passive, DR Congo grew into the match. Right before halftime, Wissa slipped behind the Portuguese defense and headed home the equalizer. Portugal suddenly looked rattled. The second half was even worse. The attack completely lost its rhythm. Ronaldo missed 2 excellent chances inside the box, and Martinez waited far too long to change anything. The match ended 1-1.
That Cristiano Ronaldo chance, a little bit about the space, and Thierry, you had a closer look at it. Let's break it down.
One thing that's important, people please at home, the team needs to score, not you need to score.
A few days later, they responded with a comfortable 5-0 win over Uzbekistan. Ronaldo scored twice and celebrated by shamelessly shouting, "I'm back," into the television cameras. He was back at the airport just a few weeks after this. Martinez declared that Portugal was improving and dismissed the criticism around his team, but many analysts weren't convinced. Uzbekistan had gifted Portugal several goals through defensive mistakes, and the performance did little to answer the bigger tactical questions surrounding the team. Those concerns returned in full force against Colombia. This time, Portugal were once again second best from the opening whistle. Colombia's aggressive pressing overwhelmed Portugal's midfield, making it almost impossible for Martinez's side to play through the pressure. The build-up repeatedly broke down, and Portugal spent long stretches pinned inside of their own half. If not for an outstanding performance from Diogo Costa, the result could have been far worse. Portugal escaped with a 0-0 draw.
Ronaldo was just another player today. He wasn't the superstar.
Right.
Apparently one of the best players that have ever kicked the ball. He just
It was
he was just an ordinary footballer tonight.
which pretty much the Portuguese team were overall today.
The result meant that Colombia topped the group, leaving Portugal to qualify as runners-up and fall into the much tougher side of the knockout bracket. Yes, it's not rigged by FIFA. Portugal could have had an easier path had they won the games they were supposed to win. So in the round of 32, they had to take on a very strong Croatia team, and they barely survived. They needed a late Gonzalo Ramos winner and the sensor on the ball to pick up a tiny strand of hair just to scrape past Croatia 2-1. That performance did little to ease the concerns about Roberto Martínez's tactics. Then came the biggest test of the tournament for the Portuguese, a round of 16 clash versus Spain. Spain had won 5 straight matches without conceding a single goal and were controlling games with ease through their midfield of Rodri, Pedri, Dani Olmo, and Fabian Ruiz. Portugal, meanwhile, looked like a team still searching for answers. Martinez set up the team in a cautious 4-2-3-1, hoping to stay compact, defend deep, and then hit Spain on the counter. The plan never really worked. Without the legs to press Spain's defenders or stretch the backline with runs in behind, Ronaldo became increasingly isolated. Portugal struggled to win the ball high up the pitch, and once Spain settled into possession, they controlled almost every minute of the game. Ronaldo barely touched the ball, Bruno Fernandes struggled to influence the match, and Portugal couldn't register a single shot on target from open play. As the minutes ticked away, many wondered when Gonçalo Ramos would come on. After all, he had just scored the winner in the game before. The answer was he never did. Despite Portugal desperately needing energy up front, Martinez kept 41-year-old Ronaldo on the pitch until the very end. With the score still 0-0 late in the game, Martinez made a baffling substitution to say the least. He took off Vitinha and moved Bernardo Silva into a much deeper midfield role alongside João Neves. Now, Bernardo's played there before and he's one of the smartest footballers in the world, but asking him to suddenly play as a defensive midfielder against Spain's midfield was a huge gamble. Spain spotted the weakness almost immediately, because deep into stoppage time they won a free kick, and while Bernardo was still out of position, Spain restarted quickly. Marino burst into the space, got a pass from Ferran Torres, and calmly finished past Diogo Costa. Just like that, it was over. Portugal were out. For Martinez, it felt painfully familiar. Just like Belgium 4 years earlier, he had inherited one of the most talented squads in international football. Just like Belgium, the team looked brilliant on paper. And just like Belgium, it fell short when the biggest tactical decisions mattered most. In the end, Roberto Martinez's legacy isn't defined by what he won, it's defined by what he failed to win. To Martinez's credit, he's always understood the politics of football, he's an excellent communicator, calm under pressure, and speaks well in front of the media. But major tournaments are not won in press conferences. They're won through bold decisions, tactical flexibility, and the courage to make difficult calls when the moment demands it. And that's where Martinez has repeatedly fallen short. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you will love this one too. Check it out right here.